And don't worry, you won't have to watch my face all the time. We'll be turning to my screen in a bit. Oh, okay, plenty of people. If anyone has any problem with sound or anything like that, just write in the room or just tell me. I think it should be okay. Except maybe the slight whining of my laptop. Let me... Yeah, now it should be a bit better. Yeah. So let me share my screen. I hope you see the whiteboard. Everyone? Anyone? Is the video going okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. So for anyone who will be doing any future lectures, if you're gonna use pictures, this is a good application. I found it out today, of course. It's Microsoft Whiteboard. It's free, small, and well, it probably eats up RAM, but I don't care for this specific use. 7:01. Should we wait a few minutes more? Let's see how many people. Oh, we have plenty of people. Oh, it doesn't matter. Hopefully this time everything will be recorded well, and anyone who's late can watch it later. So I'm gonna be starting, guys. Okay. Something weird. I'm hearing my own voice. Probably something with the recording, re-recording, and so on. I'll put them on when we come to question time. Okay, I'll try to make this lecture in 3 parts, mainly because I think the first 2 parts are more important and more directly to the question at hand. Sword and buckler, German sword and buckler, let's call it that. Ignoring the last few weeks of weird discussions on that topic in the hemisphere. So I'm gonna divide it in 3 parts. The first 2 parts are gonna be introduction, and I'll talk a little bit about my approach to interpretation, the general one. Then we'll have any questions if you have on this specific part of the lecture. After that, I'll talk specifically about the sources and the framework I see around them, the specific sources I use. Most of you know them, and we've talked about that before in different discussions on the Discord and so on. And this will be the core part of the lecture, and anyone who doesn't care about too many details or wants to see them in another format instead of me rambling at the screen can just get out of that at that point. Again, after questions, and then the last part, after we move to the first 2 parts, the last part will be going in a bit more detail about the specific plays. Well, not play by play, but certain details from the sources. And of course, the last part will be more free with more question time and more back and forth, hopefully, if any of you decide to participate. So, for the first part, I haven't prepared flashy text presentation, so you have to just look at these very boring pictures of people cutting their arms off. Not their arms off, but the arms of other people. So, my interpretation approach, before we talk about how you interpret a certain source, you have to decide what you want to get out of it. What is your goal? Is it to recreate it page by page, make it perfect? Is it to learn how to fight like Tauhofer or like Pau's cow? Where is Pau's cow? Somewhere around here. is your goal to just learn the weapon and just to use it in tournaments or use it in sparring and have fun with it and do it like fun larpy medieval kind of combat sport? That's another goal, and I don't think that these goals are mutually exclusive. You can have a deep understanding of the source and still use it successfully in sparring or in tournaments. I don't know why some people think that doesn't work when you have so many examples of how it does work. But yeah, we're gonna leave that drama today alone. So, this is the first thing. What is your goal? And my personal goal when studying almost any source is to understand both the historical and the practical use. And dividing historical and practical doesn't mean that I'm not hoping they overlap most of the time. I'm dividing them because the historical is only confirmed historical by the sources. And the practical is what you get out by testing it under the highest pressure you can achieve with modern tools and model protection. So, these are my two very overlapping points of view, the historical and the practical. The historical is everything that can be confirmed to a acceptable enough degree by the sources. For example, when I say acceptable enough, for example, if I see a technique that is performed on the left side and the same technique works on the right side and it isn't shown on the right side, I'll be absolutely fine with accepting that as a valid technique to extract from a source and practice and drill it and use it in sparring and in tournaments. And I don't think that's not historical because most things work from left and right. Doesn't matter if they're specifically mentioned or not. Some sources mention it, some don't. In Sword and Buckler specifically, we have such cases. In some places, it is submitted by a translation mistake. So the practical use, what do we talk about practical in modern terms? Well, in modern terms, we don't have historical, well, we don't have duels to the death, so we cannot test that aspect of fencing. But we can test many other aspects of fencing that they could as well. In some ways, we can test more than them, but that's another topic for another day. We can test a lot of details with sparring and with modern equipment. We can test it with sparring and with limited protection. We can do isolated testing of techniques, or we can do it in free play in competition. And I don't think these don't matter. Some people like to act like they don't apply. Oh, it's in sport; it doesn't count. Dude, it's a one guy flinging 1.5 kilos weapon at another guy doing the same. It's the same forces still apply. The fact that no one will die or it doesn't cut is not the most important detail. It's an artifact you have to deal with and accept, but it's not the most important detail. And next, when we talk about interpretation, talking about the parameters, and I just did about testing it after you have an interpretation. If you have an interpretation and you have it tested in hard drilling and sparring, you don't have an interpretation yet, in my opinion. And I will use a lot of categorization which is not historical, which means when I talk about certain aspects of the sources, I will be talking about. I'll be putting them in categories that sometimes are loosely implied in the source, sometimes are direct in the source, and sometimes are completely my invention. And I think this is often criticized because people often abuse it. They start trying to argue their own categorization is proof for the interpretation on the source itself. I feel that this is the wrong way to use your own modern categorization of actions, of exercises, of drills, of guards, of anything. I think it should be used not as a foundation, but as a tool that you can use to make the foundation stronger, or maybe even poke it a bit and see where it's weak. And this is how I'm gonna try using it. Just keep that in mind. And of course, I'll be talking today about at least three sources on Sword and Buckler. Actually, more if we talk about books, but three main sources as far as historical masters go. And of course, when we come to the topic of mixing sources, we've written a lot about that. A lot of HEMAists are doing it nowadays. 10 years ago, it was weird. People were like, oh no, you can mix sources. It's going to be terrible. It's not allowed. You have to be pure Fiore, pure Liechtenauer, or whatever else. It was shitty. Now people are more accepting, but there are still good and bad ways to do it. I think that the sources should have a there should be a foundational source in general and other sources that build on it when it comes to your personal understanding. And you should be careful. I think healthy mixing, trying to see, let's say, Fiore actions through Liechtenauer terms or the other way around, can be useful for analyzing fencing. You shouldn't just use it as, again, as a foundational material for your interpretation. And these are my approaches. So if any of you guys have any questions on them, anything you don't really understand clearly, I'm open to questions now. So it's the first question period after just 10 minutes. Anyone?
I have a question, but I want to say I really like your statement about, if you don't have the sparring and all that, you don't really have an interpretation. It's kind of like what I say at that point, you have an idea, you don't have an interpretation.
I mean, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but you meant when I talked about that people, basically meant that people should pressure test an interpretation
Yes.
till
Yeah.
it's more than a flying thought of a. I mean, it's easy. Some people just go look at the source and say this is that.
Yeah.
I think that before calling it an interpretation, my interpretation, you should invest some time and some effort and some pressure on it, so it comes out normally.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. It was quiet, so I wanted to
Oh,
point that
so
out.
yeah, sorry. I hope the other part was heard okay,
Yeah.
because I'll be moving to the anyone. If you have any other questions, I'll wait a minute and then we'll move to the next part. Okay, I'm hoping that everything is clear then. So, the three sources and the structure that we're gonna look at today. The Lignitzer Tauhofer Cow framework of sword and buckler. That's what I've been calling it for some time. That's what we've been using on the Discord, LTK, as a abbreviation, and that is flexible in my opinion. It's a good starting point for trying to understand sword and buckler, and in from German sources. But the actual basis of this, in my opinion, is the larger should be the larger Liechtenauer tradition. By that I mean mainly Ringich, Danzig, and Liu, and Codex Diominger, of course. I think that you need them as a basis to begin working through this and make the connections between these three sources that we're gonna look to today. These three masters, actually, the sources are a bit more. And so yeah, this is the basic requirement. You have to know a little bit about Liechtenauer. You have to that's not so hard to do nowadays in terms of access. You have all sorts of books. You have good books, secondary sources, study guides, and so on. You have plenty of video, and if you have to look for a HEMA place around you, most likely you have a Liechtenauer or KDF or whatever they call it, German longsword, somewhere around you. So I think this is basic prerequisite for studying sword and buckler from the German sources, which is one reason why people prefer going for 133, because they think they can understand it in isolation because it seems isolated. The truth is, most people who manage to get something useful out of 133 do so because they know other sources as well. So here you have a bunch of bunch of manuscript pages. I'll be using pages from, I think, a total of 5 or 6 manuscripts. When we say LTK, it's more in order of importance, not in dating, but all 3 sources are 15th century Holy Roman Empire sources. Although they cover, let me remember, generally white area. I don't think that matters that much, specifically in that period. There are 3 common sources in a common region, written in common language, excluding to some extent Tauhofer, who is writing in a dialect, which is a bit weird, although not weirder than some modern German dialects. So you have a bunch of sources, 3 authors: Lignitzer, Tauhofer, and Kau. For those who don't know, Paulus Kau and Andre Lignitzer are explicitly part of the Liechtenauer Gesellschaft, the Society of Liechtenauer. Tauhofer isn't, but has clearly a ton of Liechtenauer material in all of his manuscripts. He also has part of the Zettel in some of his manuscripts, so they're all connected to Liechtenauer, both as sources and sometimes explicitly part of the Gesellschaft. Although I openly will add later we can mention other sources which are not as clearly connected to Liechtenauer, but I think are also connected to German sword and buckler fencing. Now, when we talk about sword and buckler fencing, and when we talk about longsword, people for some reason think that there is a huge difference, and it appears mechanically that it appears so. On one hand, you have a sword in 2 hands; on the other hand, you have 1 sword and a buckler. The truth is, they're a lot more connected, and all primary weapons are connected. So on this page, you will see people holding these sword and buckler sources, but you'll see messers, you'll see arming swords, and you'll see long swords, with and without bucklers. Pretty much any sword that can be used in 1 hand, which includes long swords, can be used with a buckler. So when we talk about sword and buckler system, we should realize that we're covering actually a huge amount of other weapons are connected to it. Even if sword and buckler sources are not as many or not as detailed as messer or longsword, both messer and longsword are very tightly connected to sword and buckler. And such things are explicitly stated in specifically 1-handed and 2-handed swords, how they are connected, are specifically stated in some sources. I can talk about that later or answer questions if someone doesn't know what I'm talking about. Now, why we start with Lignitzer, which is pure text? Why is this the basis? I think, my personal reason is that it has the most direct connection to Liechtenauer. Let's get close to the first play, the first 3 plays. Lignitzer has 2 texts basically within the Liechtenauer corpus. The first one is the one on Harnischfechten, and the other one, he has 3. Sorry, I would have forgotten the Ringen. So he has 3 texts: Harnischfechten, Ringen, grappling, and sword and buckler. He is very clearly tied to the whole Gesellschaft, and his sword and buckler in some ways reflects that more than other sources, because he explicitly includes plays which are part of the longsword plays. The first play of sword and buckler in Lignitzer is, practically speaking, the first Zornhau play. It's not stated as such, unlike the 4th play, which is one Zwerchau play, which you can find in longsword, and it's called Zwerchau here. It's called the first play with the buckler from the Oberchau. You deliver a strike from above, You thrust, then wind, then cut on the other side, and when the opponent reacts. It's a extremely basic action in not just in Liechtenauer, of course. You can see it in many other sources with some variation. Then you have the second play where you have another similar and well-known variation. You have how exactly is this strike from below is up to interpretation. But you have a strike from below, you have a bind, and you have winding around from the outside and the inside. And then you have a low attack. So now you're having a slight variation because you have a buckler to protect your head. You can attack the legs. You're slightly moving away from long sword. Then you have the third play where you have a beat from one side, which is pretty much the Streichen described by Ringek, and the Fauci, the cuts from below with the forsage. Where you sweep from one side, you do a beat, cut on the other side, and with some continuation again. In this case, with winding and a cut to the legs. Things start changing in the next place. I won't be going now through all of them. I wanted to illustrate the connection of Liegnitzer, the most direct connection to Liechtenauer. Next is Tauhofer. Tauhofer is the least connected to Liechtenauer, so of course we go with him second. It doesn't really make sense. But Tauhofer has a lot of data. He has it from a couple of different sources. 3 of his manuscripts actually include sword and buckler, and some of them have the exact same place. Some of them have variations of certain plays. So from one side or the other, and it's very, very interesting to be able to look and check with them. Some of them are techniques which you can clearly define as connected to Liechtenauer, or you can find equivalents. Yeah, you can see this is a hanging guard and protection against the cut from one side and the other side, which is awesome. How many sources give you 2 sides of the same technique? With a slightly different, of course, artists and so on. But I think that's a very prime example of why Tauhofer is valuable. Sadly, just one of the sources has a lot of text. The other has just a few sentences on some place, so we don't have such comparison between texts. Other important things in Tauhofer is that his manuscripts are big, and they cover a lot more stuff than others. They're not just fragments connected in house books and so on. So he has a lot of curious stuff that it's not precisely within sword and buckler territory, but it uses one-handed weapons and has some crossover. I'm hoping, zoom. As you can see this cut from below. I wrote it like 10 times. And then we can go to the messer, and we can see, yeah, you have the same technique in the messer from this position, and the same thing shows up in other sources as well. So you have a lot of cross-referencing within Tauhofer. You have some techniques you can connect to Liechtenauer directly, and some that are not direct but do not contradict basic principles. And the last one is Cow. I enjoy Cow very much, and you have to check both his messer and his longsword and buckler, because it's pretty clearly not just an arming sword. But I'm putting him last, and I think he's last because in importance. Yeah, this is a fun app, but it's not the most easily controlled. I'm putting him last because I think a lot of the stuff is already covered by incident in the other 2 manuscripts. And overall, it's not a lot of material additionally. You have some plays which are identical. I've actually didn't even include the sword, the buckler half swording here. So you have some identical plays, which you can see them in text in Lignitzer, and then you can see them in a picture in Paul's Cow. You have some crossovers, very clear crossovers with Tauhofer. You can see, by the way, this grapple, of course, in Fiore as well. Not just in one-handed section, actually not in the one-handed section, in the longsword section. A lot of these techniques are common. They're common in other German sources which are not connected to Liechtenauer, and in other Messer sources like Leckküchner, which is, of course, another way you can continue your study and comparison. But as a basis and as a solid connection to Liechtenauer, these are the three sources I'm going to focus on. And I'm talking about systems. And you probably heard me say that 133 is not a system. And you can extract a system from other sources. The question is then how we define a system. For me, a martial arts system, a complete martial arts system, of course, 133 is not the only incomplete martial arts system in the world. There are tons of them. A lot of martial arts systems are specialized, and some are unclear, and like 133, parts of them are gone in history. Some are deliberately specialized and narrow. So what is required, in my opinion, to have a system? To have a system, you need structures that cover the main tactical situations, the main distances, and the main actions you can do in a fight. So, of course, I'm talking about a fighting system, martial art, whatever you call martial art. Training system can include a lot more than this. I'm purely talking about the technical and tactical use of a weapon, or use of the body as a weapon. So, the different tactical situations. When I talk about, a lot of people tend to talk about distances. They talk about wide distance, close distance, grappling, and they tend to equate Zufechten and Krieg with them. They tend to equate the distances with the tactical situations in which you are. And that's because they have a lot of overlap, but they're not the same, and you should be making a clear differentiation. So the first tactical situation we come up at in a fight is the approach, before the engagement, when we are out of distance. A lot of people say it doesn't matter what you do out of distance, but it does, because you're not in complete control of when you're in distance. If your opponent is fast enough, he can do different things and be able to attack in distance when you are perceiving him to be out of distance. So any situation where there is a possibility of aggression, of an attack towards you, you're in the approach stage of the fight. Let's call it now. This is the first tactical situation, and a system should at least have some indications what you can do in this distance and in this tactical situation, tactical part of the game. And I can immediately pull an example. This is not exactly hand sniping, because you should know the difference, because you can see he's with the middle of the strong part of the messer. It's from the text, it's pretty clearly a counterattack, but you can see other such examples of long, not here though, of long attacks from great distance. In Tauhofer, they're implied in Lignitzer, depending on how you interpret some of the parts, some of the sources. But there are clear indications of what to do if you're approaching someone and he attacks you from a wide distance, or you decide what options do I have to attack him in a wide distance. Then we come to the engagement. The engagement happens right at this point, right when there is some reaction, whatever it is, to an attack. And I let's not go with the grappling and the special stuff. The engagement is all the bind work and all the, you can call it buckler work, but some sources, unlike 133, although 133 shows that as well, but some sources don't insist on keeping sword and buckler together. So you have buckler binds here, if we can call them that. So bind work and buckler work is your engagement phase. That's when you're both in distance to hurt each other. That's when you might have a bind with the sword, or if you do not, someone is probably getting hurt. And in this regard, I think it's pretty clear that the LTK has a ton of options. The Lignitzer plays have a lot of options for, you can call them combos. You can, like the fourth play, where you throw one Zwerchhau from one side, one Zwerchhau from the other side, then a Scheidler from above, then a thrust from underneath. This really works as a combo, by the way. I haven't prepared footage right now, but I can probably find you. You can probably find yourself if you watch like one or two sword and buckler tournaments. Such left, right, up, down is a very classic combo, and it works as a combo. You have, as we said, direct counterattacks.
Right.
In the yeah, sorry. Did someone say something? Okay, I'll continue on, and if someone has something to say, just write it up. So let's. Sorry, I lost my chain of thought for a second. We have also the last tactical context, the last tactical situations is when either we're finishing the fight in grappling or we're withdrawing, Abzug as Meyer calls it, withdrawing from the fight and pulling away from the exchange and pulling away. And all sources here have options for both. There is grappling, there is different approaches to grappling and simple and complex grapples. There is we're gonna ignore the one versus many situation. That's for the end. That's the how do you say, the spice of the system. Sorry, the message was here. Yeah, so we have different options for grappling and for catching and controlling the person and for close combat. As for withdrawing, I think I did remove it because it was kind of useless, but yes, we have a continuation of this picture. Let me see. Yeah, a continuation of this picture where you cut off his hand, he falls down, and you hit him on the head. If that's not a good withdrawal to hit him on the half after the hand, I don't know what is. So these are the three tactical situations. Obviously, from what we've gone through, you can see you also cover wide, close, and grappling distances. When we talk about binds, here we come to one of my categorizations. When we talk about binds, I generally see binds divided into two groups. You have binds on the inside or on the outside, and you have binds which are equal or unequal. The term equal bind is historical. It's in Pau's Cow, and I've seen it in the other sources. It's basically when both of you are striking from high guards from the right or left, or from low guards, and you end up in an equal bind where neither has a clear advantage over the other. It's usually a high bind, equal binds. I haven't seen, and I don't think it makes sense to have. Well, you can have two low binds. You can see that here as well, actually. But yeah, this is two equal low binds. A lot of the times, of course, you have disbalanced binds. Let's move away from cow. Unequal binds where one person is coming from below and the other from above. Usually, in these cases, the one from above has some advantage. So, and inside and outside, are pretty obviously defined because of the human body and how we use it. We are with a bilateral symmetry, and we have a primary side or primary hand, primary leg. We have a one side that we favor. Even if we don't, sword and buckler specifically, even if you're ambidextrous, sword and buckler specifically is a weapon combination that favors, or rather not favors, but has very distinct functions of one side of the body than the other. So naturally, as with any swords, binds on the outside and on the inside are the two main different type of binds, or you can kill them from the left or right, but same thing. The next things that you need to have is basic attacks, which again I think are very obvious. You can read different descriptions of you have cuts from below, cuts from above. You have cuts from low position to low position, from high to low, from low to high. Basically, any cut. The Bolognese have like I don't know, 15 terms for cuts. The German sources don't, but the same cuts are there. With some small exceptions, you don't have very specific terms for a wrist cut as opposed to, let's say, a tramazones as opposed to a shoulder cut. It's both Oberhau if it comes from above. The German systems clearly care more about directions and angles than they do about names, or they just didn't care much about names. High and low targets, especially for sword and buckler. But for I think any system has to have some way to deal with low targets. And no, you're always gonna have Oberlaufen is not an argument, because if you have a wall behind you and he can reach your legs, it doesn't matter that you can reach his head. And people can be suicidal. People can just be morons. You have to have some option. It doesn't have to be spelled out in the source, but if your source doesn't know how to deal with a simple cut to the leg, it's a shitty source. Sorry. And by shitty I mean it's just incomplete. And there are probably better options out there. And grappling, again, grappling is covered in detail, although you see most of all one grapple. There is reason for that. In a huge percent of fights, you'll end up in that one grapple, and that is why it's extremely popular. You have other options as well, of course, both in written text in Lignitzer. Lignitzer has more like pinning, and in small details like the Reisen, which is actually a grapple in my opinion. Let's zoom in. We're gonna grow buckler tracking. Okay, the Reisen. The Reisen is a grapple with the pommel of the sword. You're basically tying up his wrist and his grip by using your pommel. So you have a lot of options. When I say a lot of options, you have options that cover both sides. They cover grapples from the left and the right. They don't cover wrestling, but all of these authors have wrestling sections as well. So the moment that the Ringen is not Ringen am Schwert and the Schwerts are forgotten in the corner, then you open up the Ringen section. It's not such a... this is the other very basic grapple. I don't think anyone who's fenced with one-handed weapons hasn't been in a situation to use it. And finally, the thing that systems don't need, but it's good that they have it, is special options or finishing moves or some weird situations that show you a few different approaches. You can strike a guy with a buckler while at the same time covering and cutting his hand. We can argue if this guy's preparing a buckler blow or not. You can get inside and get messy and go crazy with it. Let's see the other fun options. You can cut directly from your scabbard. The same counter that works amazingly out of the scabbard also works in the scabbard. And you can beat people with weird maces. Now, this is not specialty techniques, but this is just another point of comparison. the sword in one hand in the riding section, in the Rosfechten section of Tauhofer, where you see the same stuff you see in the Messer and the sword and buckler, of course. The really exotic thing, one of the exotic things I personally haven't figured out, because I don't think it works reliably. Maybe there's some secret, maybe it's just a power move, is the described in Lignitzer and showed in Pauskau buckler grabbing and disarming. You're holding the sword and buckler in one hand, in sort of Hauptschutt in one hand, and with the other one you grab the buckler, smash him on the head, or grapple him and put him down. So you have, in a way, a system that can have basics and then some additional special items. They're not very special, but they give you an idea of the range that the people who use this thought in. And I can go into detail, play by play. I have gone through play by play, sometimes in online discussions, sometimes in the Discord itself. We've discussed different plays and how they compare. We can sit down and compare Tauhofer's position here to Hauptschutt and make the connection to 133, because I think there are some things in 133 which are very obviously functional, very obviously working, and very obviously in these sources, but for some reason people don't usually focus on them. I don't know why. You can see guards, you can see everywhere else. You can make a comparison, and here comes the tricky bit. For example, this is the guy on the left. I would say he's in Wechselhut, on the right side. Wechselhut is one of the plays, if you remember from Lignitzer, where you do a Streich, a Fosso cut from below, as a beat, and then you continue with a cut on the other side. It's one of those plays that works on both sides. So it's described by Lignitzer from the left side, but it finishes with this works on both sides, on the other side. So I could see this and say, well, this is Wechselhut. We are gonna ignore the right guides. Tauhofer changes. You have them in both his thought and his both of his manuscripts, and he changes the opposing guard. So don't over focus on the right guy. I'm just looking at the left guy. So we can say that he's in Wechselhut and he's gonna throw a beat from below or something like that. But is he in Wechselhut? Are we sure that's Wechselhut? Why is his buckler pointing above? Is this specific of the art? Although this buckler on the other side points fairly forward. Is this a specific provocation? And what you do with this is you grab it, you open up Lignitzer, let's see Lignitzer. Yeah, you open up Lignitzer and the Wechselhut play. From the buckler, from the Wechselhaus, sweep from the left side. Now, you go through this whole play, you want to see how it works on the other side. So you go and grab that text and convert it to right side. So you have to switch everything. Then cut into his head from the left side will become the right side. Winding and thrusting into his mouth, that remains more or less the same, but you're winding on the other side. And if you're cutting with the long edge, you have to go for his left leg, I think, in this case. Although, really, in reality, it depends just which leg is in front. That depends on the opponent, not on you. So we have to go, grab this position, assume it, see how it feels, and then go through the whole play. And it can work with Wechselhut and confirm that this is Wechselhut. It can work, and this could be not Wechselhut, just a similar position. We can find some application of why the buckler is higher, or we can test it and find that it may not matter if the buckler is high or low. In both cases, you can do the third play. And this is where you have to be a little bit careful when you're starting to mix manuscripts. Just keep them clear. I think it's absolutely fine to say, I think this is most probably Wechselhut. I'm gonna use it as Wechselhut. I think that the guard doesn't need to be high every time. Maybe Tauhofer was making a bigger opening to invite the guy for a cut from the left. Maybe that's what he intended. and I'm gonna teach this and see how it goes. I think that's absolutely fine. And if someone says that's not HEMA, then no one is fucking doing HEMA. It's just no one remains that pure. It doesn't matter if you're mixing manuscripts or you're mixing idea or something creeps in from your martial arts training from 10 years ago when you're doing something completely different. Everyone is affected in some way, and I think it's better to than to ignore or pretend to ignore these elements from previous knowledge, from a priori knowledge, from prior knowledge. Don't reject that they're becoming in your head. They will be. If you're a completely blank slate, you probably cannot interpret HEMA. You have to have some experience, and that experience will affect how you do it. And I think that's completely fine. So I'll be ending the second part, and so let's say the meat of the present lecture. I'm hoping for questions, and after that, whoever wants to stay a bit for a bit longer, we can go through some of specific plays and talk a little bit about them in connection to specific Liechtenauer plays. Any questions? Oh, and anyone asking, it is being recorded. I see I have a big audience